Hello, everyone, to the fifth episode of Off the Block, where I and my today missing research colleague Max Michielsen talk with the most interesting, brightest, and smartest minds in the crypto space. We talk about anything interesting on and off the blockchain. And today I'm very excited to have Paul Brody here, Global Lead Blockchain at Ernst & Young. I used to be part of the EY blockchain team and also met Paul even before I joined EY as a student. So it's a very special and cool episode, and also very cool to have you here, Paul, on the podcast. We were just briefly talking before the recording about some of the interactions we had in the past, always very positive, also very helpful. You also were like interview partner at my master thesis. So thanks again, Paul, for taking the time back then. Thank you for taking the time today for the podcast. So very exciting to have you here on the podcast.
It's great to see you. Thanks for having me. It was actually wonderful to see you at DevConnect a couple weeks ago in Argentina, wearing your Ethereum EY t-shirt. That was fantastic.
It was very cool because I was just walking through the conference hall, and then I hear somebody saying very cool t-shirt, and I turn around, it was you, Paul. I was like, what are the chances? I had actually a similar experience at Korean Blockchain Week last year, where I was wearing a Avara Aave backpack, and somebody touches me and says, cool backpack, and I turned around and it was Danny from Aave. So I tend to bump or get into such situations. And Paul, I already told you before we get into you as a person, what you do at EY, and what's currently hot. And actually, I think the topic of today's podcast episode is also very cool because we're going to not only talk about Ethereum, which we are both very bullish and passionate about, but also specifically about privacy and what EY is doing. I think there's a lot of cool things, and you guys not have been doing it lately since it's a narrative, but already since years. Is we going to first start with our 10 rapid fire questions that we have for every guest. Let me go straight to them and ask them to you. I mean, if you want to say more, feel free to say more, but we usually aim for short answers and get a little bit of a feel of you. And with this, I just kick it off with the first question, which is, what year did you first hear about Ethereum?
2014, I think.
And can you tell us in what context it was?
Yes, I was working at IBM. I was the vice president in charge of the global electronics industry, and we were working on building our first blockchain, which was a IoT network infrastructure for Samsung. And we were actually working on Bitcoin, and it was going very slowly. It was quite difficult. We loved this idea of distributed computing and paying for stuff on the Internet of Things. But Bitcoin is slow. It has complex block times. And one of the engineers working for me said, hey, I've met this guy. He's got a really cool idea. It's like Bitcoin, but programmable and much faster. And we didn't know it was called Ethereum. I can't say I knew it was called Ethereum. All I knew was that. That is what we want. I want that. And so we switched ourselves to work with Vitalik on the alpha version of Ethereum to build a product that was prototyped, was called Adept, autonomous, decentralized peer-to-peer telemetry, which is basically a decentralized IoT management infrastructure that we prototyped jointly with Samsung.
Very cool, very cool. It also shows how long you've been in the space. That's the early ETH days. Very cool and exciting. The next question I have, and I think I know the answer, at least in the past, I think I knew the answer. Let's see if it changed or not, is what's a blockchain topic you never get tired of discussing or talking about?
It's probably either A, Ethereum, B, how terrible and wrong private blockchains are,
This
or
was my
C,
guess.
privacy.
This was my guess, yes.
I used to feel like I would go around inside of EY like a broken record, telling all the partners, please do not try to sell your client a private blockchain. It's not going to work.
I remember you were very early and vocal in that. I believe it was, which years was it? It was 2018, 19, where this was this trend of private blockchains, the Cordas and... Yeah.
It's always been there. From day one, this idea of having a sort of private permission blockchain has always been around. It's been a battle since then. The ground has shifted. So people really aren't trying to build private chains anymore, but they're all trying to build private L2s on top of Ethereum. And I think some of them, it's a hybrid, and some of them have a slightly better chance of working. But in general, I'm still not in favor. The whole point of a blockchain is a decentralized infrastructure you share with other companies to work together. And so I think this idea of a private chain doesn't always make a lot of sense.
And I completely agree. I think the next question I'm very interested in, because I know you're very bullish on ETH, maybe not on the assets, which is also like a topic I want to get into in this podcast, but what's a non-ETH crypto asset you find particularly exciting and why?
So I want to say Bitcoin because I do like some of the ideas behind Bitcoin, right? In particular, this idea of kind of Bitcoin as digital gold. But at the end of the day, it's not that exciting. I don't have a name for it anymore, but I've always been attracted to this idea of DePIN, right? And I've always believed that eventually we're going to have like real on-chain businesses. We'll have decentralized compute. We'll have decentralized data storage. None of these things have matured yet. We don't have obvious winners in this space. But I'm very excited about decentralized compute, decentralized AI, decentralized storage. I think there are lots of these cases where there's more infrastructure at the edge of the network, cars, people, compute, whatever it is, than there is in the world's data centers. And those are prime candidates for a blockchain-like decentralized ecosystem to allocate capacity and pay for it.
Would you also agree that what we used to call IoT, like in like the 2017-18 cycle, is now DePIN?
It is. I mean, I didn't know it was called DePIN. We were building this for Samsung, but the Samsung came to us with this really great problem statement, which I still fully believe in. They said the cost of managing IoT devices is unreasonable, right? You sell a device and then you have to spend money all this time maintaining it and maintaining the cloud infrastructure. And the thing that's crazy is all these devices are really smart. They're smart. Most of them are connected to the electric outlets. They have access to Wi-Fi. Like, why aren't they maintaining themselves? The average CPU on almost every device is idle almost all the time. There's no reason why your washing machine can't be backing up your refrigerator and your home server and your TV all working together to give you kind of a home cloud. It doesn't make sense to me that we haven't figured this out yet and that large companies are still spending billions of dollars to manage their network infrastructure. The network, Sun Microsystems used to have the slogan, the network is a computer. We need to get back to that. The network of all these devices should be the computer itself.
And we can talk more about this later in the podcast. If I go to the next question I have for you, what's a crypto trend that in your opinion is widely underestimated?
I thought about this one. I don't have a good answer for you. I think that the crypto trend that's vastly overestimated or is we pay too much attention to is things like yield farming and collateralized lending. It's because we know how to do it and it's programmatic, so we like to do a lot of it, and we've terribly financialized the whole like blockchain ecosystem. But if it was up to me, we'd do more non-financial things with blockchain. I'm excited about those things. I want to see a world of decentralized business processes, tools, services, products, not just money flowing around.
Next one is a question I personally don't like answering, so I'm going to ask it to you. What do you think will be the ETH price in 10 years?
That is a great question. I'll go ahead and give you an entirely speculative answer. I'm going to say somewhere in the $30,000 to $50,000 range.
30 to 50. Yeah. It's funny because
I'm just generally very bullish on ETH. I think right now the price of ETH is a little bit depressed because the L2 ecosystem has been so wildly successful, and to at least some degree, we've slightly underpriced what blob space and sort of network capacity should be. But in the end, I am a firm believer in the idea that we will find a use for every ounce of available transaction capacity that there is, and that ultimately supply and demand will come into sync, and that the yield on Ethereum will be great.
What do you think is one enterprise use case that will get meaningful scale in 2026?
For sure, enterprise payments are ramping up very nicely. I don't know about meaningful scale, but I would like to see the first glimmers of meaningful adoption around procurement. So every business agreement, and I know you've heard me and other people have heard me say this a million times, all business agreements are money for stuff under the terms of some kind of agreement. And so far, we just keep focusing on tokenizing the money, but actually, the total contract value and the value of automating the whole picture, tokenizing the product you're buying, putting the business agreement into a smart contract, doing all of those things under privacy with zero knowledge, that's worth, if fixing the payment saves you $5, fixing the whole cycle saves you 500. And so I want to see this use case get traction. I think it's a path to getting us beyond just moving the money. The money is the last part of a transaction, a business agreement that we've set up.
What would you say is the most misunderstood aspect of enterprise adoption on Ethereum?
I think people always ask me, like, why has it taken so long? And they talk about they talk about many things, gas prices, regulatory environment. And my answer always is it's actually privacy. At the end of the day, who you pay, how much you pay, what you're buying, these are among the most sensitive things in enterprise world. And in the world of crypto and blockchain, most of the developers are very young. They don't have a background in enterprise software. They haven't usually worked for a large company, especially in procurement. They do not understand how driven by secrecy all these business agreements are. And the funny thing is, like, having been on the inside, these agreements are all secret, although the truth is they're remarkably similar, having seen a lot of them. But secrecy rules, it's very important. And I used to say Ethereum would never have a scalability problem unless we fix the privacy problem. By the way, I was completely wrong. We got to scalability first through things like payments of fungible tokens that don't require as much privacy. But eventually we got back around to privacy.
What currently excites you the most within the crypto space?
After 9 years of working on privacy, seeing this guy finally be a top of agenda item is, I don't want to go around with a big smile on my face saying I told you so, but I do kind of feel a little bit like this is kind of cool and I'm happy about this.
You know Da Vinci, the guy who had the YouTube video where he was telling people, like, I think 10 years ago, like, please buy a little bit of Bitcoin, believe me. And he walks now around with a t-shirt, I told you so. So maybe you can do the same thing.
I didn't bring it. I have a t-shirt that I bought after I became the chairman of the Enterprise Ethereum Alliance. It says cult leader. So I have something similarly immodest. But I will have to find a t-shirt that says I told you so eventually as well.
Very cool. So we don't only have it for Bitcoin, but we also have it for ETH. So I would love seeing that. The second last question I have in this section is like, which do you think will be bigger by 2030? Stablecoins or tokenized assets?
Stablecoins.
Yeah.
We need stablecoins to buy tokenized assets, but we also need stablecoins for payments and procurement and payroll and all kinds of other things. And so I think stablecoins will be larger than tokenized assets, but over time, because every asset will become a tokenized asset, eventually we will find ourselves in a situation where the supply of assets, and the world has about $800 trillion in assets, that's more than the money supply. So eventually one of those things will cross. In the long run, in the end state, there will be more tokenized value in assets than there are in pure stablecoins cash.
And the last question we have, which I always like, is one word to describe Ethereum heading into 2026.
Construction.
And can you elaborate on that?
I can. So people ask me, like, is Ethereum ready for prime time? And I think at the big picture answer is yes. We have scalability, privacy is maturing, banks are adopting. But if you've worked in like real world finance, traditional finance, what you know is that there's like a million small things that have to get built to make these things work. Trading desks need security systems. Everybody needs KYC. We have to have screening tools. There's like a million little pieces of software and infrastructure that are needed to sort of fill in the gaps. So we've got these big things. We have stable coins, we have tokenized assets, we have blockchains, we have layer 2 networks, right? We have bridges. We have all these like big things, but there's all these like small little things that are needed to help stitch them together in just the right way. 2026 is a year in which people are going to build a lot of those things, and a few people are going to become fabulously rich when they get to sell that little thing to a very big company for a ridiculous sum of money because somebody figured out, wow, this particular thing is really important. And trust me, if I knew what that was, I would be building it. All I know is there's going to be a lot of them.
Very cool. I mean, if we go back to you as a person and what you have been doing, Paul, you mentioned you were back at IBM, where you first heard about Ethereum and blockchains in 2015. Like, I think it's already 10 years, right? So you celebrate your 10-year anniversary. You're the global lead blockchain at Ernst & Young. Which I think is also like astonishing and also crazy within the crypto world, because first of all, like 10 years is a crazy long time in crypto, but also like being in a position for 10 years in crypto is also very crazy, because I think like Vitalik is one of the few founders. I mean, Satoshi, he vanished, we don't know about him, but I believe like Vitalik is one of the few like successful builders who is consistently still is active. Most of them, they retire or they vanish or we don't know. So it's like already like quite like a track record that you have built up. Maybe just like for you personally, what made you so passionate about blockchain, about Ethereum in personal, why you wanted to be in this role, what made you stay so long in this role, why you're currently still in this role. Yeah. What excited you so much? And also like all over this years, like seeing how the space developed, like it's a twofold question. Like, did you expect it to go this way? You mentioned already something, you thought like that they're going to figure out privacy before scalability. So now it's the other way around. So yeah, maybe just like looking back and where we are at right now. Yeah.
So when I first sort of really started to understand what blockchains and Ethereum could do, I was like, wow, this is just transformational to everything, right? It changes our understanding of compute infrastructure. It changes our understanding of like transaction processing. It has this potential to completely transform business agreements, supply chains, right? I saw this incredible potential, and network infrastructure, everything. And it was this world computer vision that Vitalik had that was fantastic. And I saw a million things to do in this space. And I was like, wow, I want to go work on this. I want to be at the forefront of the revolution. I was maybe just a tiny bit too old to join the beginning of the internet revolution. I remember getting like Netscape when I was in college. It was rolled out. So I guess I was close to it, but not quite at the start. Same for wireless, like wireless mobile and data. And I was like, this is a revolution. I'm here at ground zero. I'm at the beginning, right? At the very beginning. And I was like, I want to do this. And IBM was like, well, you need to go and do your other job. And I was like, okay, so how about I leave and I go someplace that will let me do this? So I left IBM, I joined EY. One of the reasons why I'm the global blockchain leader at EY is I made up this title and gave it to myself. No one objected. And eventually I persuaded other people to give me money and let's make this a proper business, which I did. We're officially celebrating fiscal year 2016, which started in July of 2015, was the first year that blockchain was like an official thing at EY with a budget. And so I've been doing this for 10 years. Why am I still here? The answer is there is still so much to be done. Like, one of my jokes is like, I am 8 years into what I thought was a 2-year project. So I got into EY and it took us a while to figure out like, what are we supposed to do? I was like, okay, I don't want to build a blockchain accounting system, but I do want to build blockchain industrial software. I do want to build analytics software so that auditors can do financial statement audits. And so we started out with this early product roadmap. And very quickly, I was like, wow, we need privacy. And, we haven't reached my end state goal. And the end state goal for me is that we are using blockchain to organize, manage, and process the world's business-to-business transactions. We are not done, so I am not done. Now, I may not make it to the finish line, but I would at least like to be in this business. I want to be in this business until I feel like I have nothing more substantial or thoughtful or useful to contribute.
So, Paul, I have to tell you the news. You're gonna be there till you're gonna die. So,
Maybe. I hope not. I hope that doesn't mean I'm going to meet with an early death. I'm
no,
working on my cardio. Um, but I think, yeah, there's a ton of stuff to do. And I think I am energized by the amount of work there is to do.
looking back when you started, and somebody would have asked you where will we be in 10 years and where we are right now. We are on track. We are ahead. We are behind.
So, big picture, I was wrong about everything and also right about everything. Um, I was right about Ethereum. I was right about public blockchains. I was right about kind of the big picture size of the opportunity. I was completely wrong about how long it would take us to get to non-financial applications, how hard it would be to build useful, scalable privacy technology, how quickly we would get corporations to adopt it. This was truly, Ethereum crypto finance was truly my first experience in a highly regulated industry. I kind of grew up in the technology space, which was lightly regulated, not in finance or healthcare. So I had no concept of like how long it was going to take to get regulation done. So we are fabulously ahead of schedule in terms of total adoption, transaction processing, scalability, community ecosystem. And we are insanely behind schedule when it comes to privacy, business applications, technology adoption in the enterprise.
And actually, also here, I feel like I'm very similar to you when it comes to non-financial applications. I was very bullish on Web3 Social. So when Forecaster came out, Lens, I even built one of the first like Lens applications. I thought it would like really kick off, but it still seems that like financial applications still dominate and infrastructure. Which I think probably can be explained by like crypto's first use case being like digital money, and obviously like you have more incentives or there's like potentially more financial upside if you build within the financial domain. But I still also very much look forward, and I also like a little bit like surprised that it still takes a little bit longer than I thought. For non-financial application to kick off, because I remember like back in 2018, like there were like a lot of startups, like I don't know, they were like doing like not that they're not doing it right now anymore, but it was like more like let's say present in mindshare, like within like healthcare, supply chain management. Also here in Switzerland, we had like, so
They
many different. Yeah.
all those startups cratered when they hit the privacy wall. They discovered that there was no easy solution to privacy, and therefore they couldn't really build this kind of scalable infrastructure that people wanted to build proper applications. And it was funny because I remember reading all of these ICO prospectuses, all the white papers back in like 2017 and 2018, and thinking to myself, this would work great if they had privacy, and they don't, and they have no idea what they're doing. And I was a big ICO skeptic because I really felt like so many of them were just not going to work. But that was it. That was so many of these like petered out. And one thing I worry about is that investors and business users, they have learned the wrong lesson. Like the lesson they think they learned is we tried that and it didn't work, right? But the correct lesson is we tried it and it didn't work because we didn't do it properly and we need to try again. The other thing is, I think, and I comfort myself a little bit with this. I went back, and this is funny. I'm a huge history buff, especially the history of business. I love reading like histories of business crises, companies, and things like that. And one of the things I did was I went back and I looked at what the U.S. stock market looked like in its very early days, like the 1830s, 40s, 50s, 60s kind of a thing. And one of the things that was interesting was like it was like 95% financial services. Like overwhelmingly, it was basically banks and insurance companies. And if you looked at the US economy back then, I mean, it was agriculture, mining, railroads, and then finance. And the markets started as financial markets, and most of the things in the financial markets were financial. And so I sort of take comfort in the idea that Ethereum, it's normal for a new ecosystem when it develops to maybe it starts in finance, right? To sort of take that old joke, like, why does he rob banks? Because that's where the money is. Like, why do markets get built? Because that's where the money is. And the markets tend to be disproportionately about money at the beginning, because markets are still ultimately about money.
And I think you mentioned it before. So what's one of the missing pieces, or the main missing piece? It's privacy. Let's go over to this topic, which I think is very exciting because, first of all, you've been very active in this space for quite some time. Right now, it's a very hot topic. We see the performance of Zcash. Maybe two things. In your opinion, what's privacy in the context of public blockchains? And why do you think that Zcash, why is it right now popping up so much and being in mind share, and we see like the Zcash price performance?
So I think in general, right, Zcash is having a moment because it's a privacy chain at a time when privacy is kind of on people's mind, right? And they've been doing it and doing it well for quite a long time. It's funny because, of course, Zcash is super popular in the Ethereum community as a thing people like to talk about, but no one actually uses it. I mean, not nobody, but it's not heavily used, right? And even within Ethereum, we don't actually use a lot of privacy infrastructure all that much. But I think all this talk about privacy has kind of revived interest in Zcash. And Zcash is the OG privacy chain. They do it exceptionally well. They build a lot of really cool stuff. It's not actually useful for business users, but it's a very cool proof of concept. And in fact, at EY, we built our early prototypes of Nightfall were heavily inspired by the work that was done by the Zcash team.
And to my first question, privacy within the context of blockchains for our audience. What is it? How would you define it? And why is it so relevant?
So privacy is super important from a couple of different perspectives. And I think this is where we get to now. And what's really important is to start thinking about privacy in the context of what consumers need versus what businesses want. There are a group of, I'll call them privacy extremists, which fundamentally believe that privacy and anonymity are the same things, that money is speech, and that any constraints on how you spend money or any sort of visibility into that is sort of somehow not consistent with a true understanding of liberty. I am not one of those people. Like, at the end of the day, money is not speech. It is the resources of a society. And I don't really believe that we all just sort of earn all of our money ourselves. And all the things that I have are things that I've worked for. All the money I have is money I earned. But I couldn't have earned that money if I didn't exist in a society full of other people paying taxes and paving roads and keeping things safe. And so money is part of society's kind of broader resources. I think at the consumer level, reasonable expectation of privacy is a basic human right. I don't think it's an absolute right. I think there are circumstances where privacy can be compromised. I don't think, privacy should protect you from privacy should not shield you from investigation if you have done something bad or wrong, right? But at the same time, I'm very, very much opposed to systems that allow governments and private corporations to sweep up everybody's data like en masse. I think you should have to invade somebody's privacy, you need a really good reason, and it has to be done with good judicial protections. And so for consumers, I think consumers have a reasonable expectation of privacy as a kind of basic human right. Corporations are not people. And I do not think that they have because they are not people, they do not have human rights. They do not have rights at all, in my personal opinion. This is kind of maybe a matter of philosophy. They are a construct of people getting together to make some money. And I think privacy is a practical thing that companies need in order to do business effectively. And privacy is especially important to protect companies from sharing information with their competitors. But it is not a tool that should be considered usable for protecting companies from regulators or government authorities. And so I think in the business context, there's privacy is a requirement. Privacy, really, confidentiality is a requirement for doing business effectively on chain. And as a consumer side, I think privacy, a reasonable expectation, not an absolute, but a reasonable expectation of privacy is a basic human right.
I mean, I love hearing this because I remember when I was at Dev Connect, I think it was 2 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago in Buenos Aires, I went to DuneCon and there was a panel, DeFi panel, with, I think it was the founders of 1inch, Arbitrum, Aave, and David from Bankless as a moderator. And I believe it was... I forgot his name, so sorry about that, but one of the founders of Arbitrum who was saying that the notion of privacy has changed over time. And maybe like initially it was more like what you said, that privacy is equal to anonymity, but now it's more of a practical sense. So, and he made like this metaphor which really stuck to my head, is that we should aim for like this privacy that we, for example, have with the bank. So the bank obviously knows how much money you have, but you don't want the public or the other clients of the bank to know how much money you have. So like there's like some, like there's a notion or like a certain level when it comes to privacy.
Right, and it should be a crime for bank employees to misuse your private data, right? So that's really important. The other thing is, just in the last 4 or 5 years, really even in the last 2 years, our understanding of what's needed for privacy has matured a great deal. So, when we started our privacy journey at EY back in 2017, I don't think we had a particularly nuanced understanding of where privacy was. Instead, we just listen, it's all privacy. We're just going to put everything inside of the zero knowledge proof area. It's going to be a big black box and you'll be able to move stuff around inside of it. Now, what's happening is the market is kind of bifurcating into a couple of different privacy solutions areas. There's, I'll call it privacy light. So these are solutions that don't make robust use of zero knowledge, but they do things like privacy pools, and they work primarily with fungible tokens, and they transact at arm's length with other systems. So you can, for example, be a part of a privacy pool, and as a member of that privacy pool, you can invest, say, you can put some assets into Aave, right, and earn a return on those assets. So in that circumstance, there's no actual encryption required. You don't need sophisticated zero knowledge for that. You're using a bunch of pooling. You're acting like a couple of sets of double mixers. It makes a reasonable level of privacy pretty easy to do, and you don't need any super fancy a math to do that. So those are emerging. I call that privacy light. To be clear, people need to be aware it's privacy light. And the analytics are getting really good. I have seen Chainalysis follow stolen money through 2 mixers and a cross-chain bridge. It's not perfect, but the analytics are getting very good. So if you do a lot of transactions on chain in these privacy light pooling environments, you will eventually be sort of discerned from the data. The signal will be apparent from the noise. Then there's what we are building, which is more enterprise appropriate, which is, I'll call it industrial scale privacy. And in the industrial scale privacy, it's more expensive, it's slower, it's compute intensive, because what you're doing is you are putting everything inside a zero knowledge ecosystem, right? You're putting it all into a black box, and it should stay there. It's not a mixer, it's not a pool, it's a black box. You can transact inside that black box. You can apply logic, you can move money around to other business parties, you can execute business agreements, but it's all inside this black box. Money goes in, it basically doesn't really come out. And the reason for that is that the minute you take money out, every time you put money into the black box or you take it out of the black box, you emit some light, you emit some information. As long as it's inside the black box and you're moving it around in there, you have really industrial strength privacy. And one of the key shortcomings of the privacy light approach is there's 3 critical shortcomings. Number 1, it is vulnerable to reverse engineering with good analytics. Number 2, it doesn't work for anything that's non-fungible. So if you are only dealing in fungible assets, no problem. Right, you have this. It's the story I tell is it's like trying to keep track of a glass of water in a lake. It's really hard. But the minute you start dealing with a non-fungible item, which is like trying to keep track of one piece of Lego in the bathtub, that's easy, right? And basically, these privacy pooling systems don't work for anything non-fungible, and they really don't work for anything where you and I need to have a business agreement with unique terms and conditions, because now that links the two of us in a way that you can't do with a set of arm's length relationship in a pool. So industrial strength privacy for enterprises is, to some degree, it's diverging from consumer light requirements, which are like, I want to have a reasonable expectation of privacy. I don't want my neighbors to know that I put some money into Aave, right? Whereas if I'm a business, it's very important. EY, have a procurement agreement with, company ABC. They gave us an extra good deal on the grounds that we were buying a lot, but we had to promise not to tell anybody about it. All of that needs to be secret. And most of the things that companies make are non-fungible, right? Apple makes millions and millions of iPhones. You might think they're all the same. They're fungible. They're not. They're non-fungible. The minute you have a serialized item with a unique identifier, it's non-fungible.
Something that I wanted to ask you is that you said that you believe that 2026 will be the golden year of Ethereum privacy. Why do you think next year is going to be the golden year for Ethereum privacy?
So just a ton of solutions are going sort of out of beta and into production. That will include Nightfall from EY, but it will also include Aztec, Coty. There's several others. So for the first time ever, Ethereum users will be able to transact through a variety of different privacy solutions, ranging from the privacy-like pooling options to industrial strength ones, with a huge range of variation of KYC and regulatory compliance levels, from 0 to very high. It will be a golden year. There'll be this golden explosion of kind of opportunities, options, capabilities, and privacy. It won't be the year of mass adoption because it'll take some time for the mechanics of this stuff to work out, for people to build applications and tools for it. But in terms of, I think people will remember 2026 year as the year that Ethereum privacy got industrialized and started to scale.
And when it comes to those developments, like maybe Nightfall, you want to quickly touch upon Nightfall and tell the audience what it is, how it developed over years, yeah?
Yeah, so, I mean, again, sort of one of my history buff things, very early on in my time at EY, I was like, wow, the one thing we're missing is privacy. And I had this recollection that really, if you go back to the early days of the web, e-commerce didn't take off until we had SSL encryption. So it's like, we need SSL encryption, its equivalent for blockchain. And I thought this will take us like a year or two. We'll hire some mathematicians, we'll knock it out, right? 8 years later, so this was 2017. 2018, we showed off a prototype. We built like a prototype. We shamelessly copied some of the key ideas from Zcash, and we built a supply chain prototype, and we showed it at DevCon at 2018 in Prague. And at that time, when ETH was $265, it cost us $100 in gas to do a single transaction, and we needed 2 full blocks. 2 blocks to do the transaction, per transaction. And I think we spent about $5,000 to build this like prototype supply chain on the network. And so I was like, wow, this works, but the cost is impossible. Like, no, at $100 a transaction, no one's going to use it. And so then we set about doing another thing that we thought was easy and would be wrong, was like, oh, we'll just get the price down, right? Long story short, here we are, 2025. I have the price taken from $100 down to 5 cents. So we got there eventually to a very reasonable kind of transaction price. It just took longer than we expected. And along the way, what emerged, Nightfall 4, which is where we are at, is a ZK rollup. So that's 1 zero knowledge for privacy, 1 zero knowledge for scalability. It's a rollup, so it does transaction processing. And then we also built a companion application called Starlight. And Starlight allows you to build custom zero-knowledge circuits that run under privacy quite easily. So then what you have is you have money and stuff moving around under privacy with customized business logic. And sometime in 2026, these will go into production, and also we will fully integrate them. So you can have like a whole business ecosystem under privacy. And by the way, all of this stuff we have decided to make it public domain and open source So it is really a gift to the ecosystem. It's not an EY product. And one of the things that's very important is you won't hear me calling it EY Nightfall. You will just hear me calling it Nightfall because it is a public domain, open source contribution to the Ethereum ecosystem.
I'm just thinking when we talk about privacy, do you feel it's more going to be on the Ethereum layer itself, like Vitalik announced, like those new like privacy SDKs? Is it more projects building on top, like let's say more crypto native? Is it your solution, a combination of both? Like how do you feel will this like develop over like let's say next years and the years beyond?
So I think we'll have a couple of things going. I think sort of, I'll call it privacy-like tools like pools and mixers and stuff like that with KYC components will become a standard part of the L1 and the basic infrastructure. And so there'll be this like standard layer of modest privacy that comes with everything, right? So we'll start to get towards this idea of a reasonable expectation of privacy for consumers being a standard thing. And by the way, like the more people who use the privacy tools, the better they become, the more resistant they become to de-obfuscation through analytics. Secondly, though, we'll see this layer of layer 2s and layer 3s that are very specifically privacy focused. And, come early next year, EY's Nightfall, this Nightfall technology will be deployed as a layer 3 on top of Plume, the RWA network, on top of Celo. And I hope to announce 1, possibly 2 more networks early next year. So we are, fingers crossed, EY, I hope, we will be the creators of the most widely deployed privacy technology that's really industrial scale and private strength on chain in 2026.
I think that
right?
sounds very cool, yeah.
I mean, it's definitely competition. We have some super brilliant competition in the form of Aztec. And the thing I really like about this competition, my favorite part about it is
innovation, no?
Yeah, but also like, I will be super happy if we win, but I will also be super happy if we lose. Like if we get crushed by somebody who has an even better like privacy idea, we got into privacy not to like, we got into privacy to get privacy adopted. So the fact that we spurred on other people to get it done is great. I really want to win. Don't get me wrong. Like I'm intensely, ridiculously competitive. But I'm also prepared for the possibility that we might not win this race, but that would still be okay because if everybody got privacy, that would still be a very happy end state for me.
I mean, I want to move away from the topic of privacy and touch upon another, like I would say, like probably crypto's most successful use case, which is stablecoins. You made the statement with stablecoins, everyone will have money on chain. We already have like, I think it's 300 billion in stablecoin supply. It's expected to grow even more. I felt like the last 6 months, every week we had the news of another like TradFi player announcing a stablecoin project or initiative, etc. How do you see this space evolving over time? And will it be still something that's mainly being used, like let's say in emerging regions like South America, Africa, Southeast Asia, or like countries with high inflation? Or will we also see it like, let's say like in Europe or North America? And yeah.
Everything is going on stablecoins. And this is another idea I'm super excited about. And I get to share this concept I have, which is this idea that the future of money is streaming. And let me tell you what I mean by this. In the world of music, a long, long time ago when I was a kid, when I was a very small kid, you could still buy like records and tapes, right? So you bought a record, it was like it was a big chunk of music. And then when we went digital, you bought the CD, it was still a whole chunk of music. And then when we had the internet, you could start to download. First you would steal it and eventually you'd pay for it. But you could buy like, the revolution that Apple brought you was you could buy 1 track at a time for 99 cents. But eventually, Spotify came along and said, why buy a whole track? Just subscribe, and we will send you whatever you're listening to at that moment. We'll start streaming. And what happened there was basically we went from analog to digital. But even in the world of digital, we kept with this old analog practice of buying whole chunks of music. First, it was a whole CD, and then it was a whole track. But actually, at a certain point, storing data and streaming it became so cheap that you could just stream music. That's what's going to happen with money. So right now we move money around in big chunks, right? And we move it in like you get paid every 2 weeks or every 4 weeks. You pay your mortgage once a month, you pay your rent once a month, you pay your electric bill once a month. You do all these things once a month. In the old days, that was because anything more frequent than that was too expensive for people to handle. Not only was the payment expensive, but processing like how much you're owed and doing all of that stuff was very difficult. Like there were, IBM sold billions and billions of dollars of mainframes, and they could barely keep up with calculating your electric bill once a month. It's different now. Your phone company, your electric company, your mortgage company, your bank, your employer, they know to the penny every single day exactly how much you've earned, spent, consumed, everything. The only thing that's keeping us on these like weekly, monthly schedules is the cost of managing payments and a little bit of inertia. But I think the world is headed towards basically almost continuous streaming of money, daily payments. And I'll tell you why. First of all, it's a revolution in how people work, right? Especially if you're not a salaried employee. If you're an hourly worker or a gig worker, and your company says, hey, we'd love you to deliver an extra package or work a few extra hours for overtime today. Turns out that incentive, 100 to 300% more effective if you get paid the same day. It's much less effective to say, I'll pay you more, but not for another 2 weeks. But if you say, I'll pay you more today, it's very effective, right? By the way, it works the other way around too, right? If the electric company says, we really need you to save money today, we need you to switch up the lights because there's huge industrial demand, right? If you pay your electricity bill that night, it's a bit like act today, save today, do extra work today, get paid today, right? And by the way, if you're a manufacturer, a company, if you're the electric company, whatever, why should you be extending your clients 30 or 60 days worth of credit? It takes 30 days to get the bill and you get paid in another 30 days. That's 60 days of credit you're extending on average to your clients. That also doesn't make a lot of sense. And so we're going to switch this model where we pay and get paid for everything every day. It's going to be the streaming equivalent for money, and it's going to completely transform the velocity of money, the world of working capital, how companies manage themselves. It is going to be transformational. And my personal prediction is, first and foremost, this will start in 2026, and it's going to start with payroll. Because the gig working companies, the hourly working companies, plumbers, electricians, you name it, when it becomes possible to pay people every day for their work, people and it doesn't cost any extra, people are going to demand it.
You already take away the next part because I wanted to get to the prediction section of the podcast. Just before that, do you feel like TradFi, I mean, I think it's both, but is TradFi more becoming like crypto more becoming like TradFi?
So there's this like thing I heard during the Cold War. I don't know where it came from, but organizations that oppose each other eventually come to resemble each other. We are witnessing a convergence and clash of the titans here. If I had to predict the winner of this battle, it's going to be the new entrants. It is, in the history of business experience for me, it is much easier for new entrants to add capabilities than it is for incumbents to subtract complexity and act more nimbly. It's not impossible. Sometimes incumbents master this. They work like hell and they make themselves dynamic. They have so many advantages, but they also have tremendous diseconomies and disadvantages of scale and complexity. And so it will be a race between the new entrants to add capability, regulatory compliance, and functionality, and the legacy partners to add, to simplify and accelerate and embrace new technology before they lose their most valuable customers to the new entrants.
When we are now getting to the end of the podcast, because our time is sadly up, if you had to make a couple of predictions for, let's say, next year, can be anything crypto, can be also about what we talked, stablecoins, privacy, Ethereum enterprise adoption. What would be some prediction you feel comfortable sharing?
Super bullish on enterprise adoption, super bullish on privacy, I'll make a prediction that's more related to pricing, which is that by the end of 2026, one of my hypotheses is that the prices of Ethereum and Bitcoin will diverge. So historically, they have tended to move in the same direction, even though they are deeply different assets and systems. And I have long considered this an indicator that most investors don't really understand the difference. They just think they're all crypto. And so if I had to make a prediction in terms of maturity and adoption, it's that there will be a divergence in 2026 and people will come to see crypto assets, Bitcoin versus Ethereum, which is this platform world computer infrastructure that has a crypto foundation. And these things are fundamentally different and they should be valued differently.
I think you can read my mind because I wanted to ask you, like, what ETH narrative is your favorite? Like ultrasound money, digital oil, world computer. You mentioned world computer. Is it your favorite way to describe Ethereum because it's so diverse and multifolded? Or
It is. I think, this whole store of value ultrasound money thing, it's a great idea, but I feel like in many ways it's Ethereum trying to be better at Bitcoin than Bitcoin is. And I actually think from a technical standpoint, ultrasound money actually did succeed in that. If you look at the sort of emissions rate and network inflation, Ethereum is better. But culturally, Bitcoin won that argument. Bitcoin is a scarcity asset, and I don't want to compete with Bitcoin as a scarcity asset. I want Ethereum. I see Bitcoin and Bitcoiners fundamentally see the world as a zero-sum ecosystem. There's only 21 million Bitcoins. That's it. Ethereum is a positive sum ecosystem. We build stuff on top of it, and the stuff that we build contributes to the prosperity of all of humanity. So I'm a positive sum guy, and I see the world in these positive sum terms. So the narrative I like the most is world computer because we build stuff with computers.
And the last point I want to touch upon is, like, you made the prediction that you believe the ETH price is going to be like at 30K in 10 years. Some people were in this current cycle like a little bit like disappointed by the ETH price performance, Bitcoin being. I mean, also if you would have asked me like nearly 10 years ago, Bitcoin at 100K, where would be Ethereum, where would be the Ether price be? I would say at least 10K if Bitcoin is at 100K. We didn't really have it. Some people say L2s are more parasitic. Can you maybe, and I know you're not too much of a financial guy, but maybe give your reasoning why you think that Ether as an investment can still be successful? Because I feel there's still some people that say Ether as a technology will become highly successful without Ether as an asset appreciating in tandem. Like, how do you see this?
So I think what we have right now is a mismatch between network capacity and demand, right? I think fundamentally sort of the world computer, the value of the world computer is based on demand for transactions. And what's very simply happened is that demand for transactions has gone up astronomically, but supply has gone up even faster. And so the market clearing price has gone down. And that I think is a reflection, at least in my mind, of some of the value of Ethereum has in the short run gone down. So in the short run, I feel like the price of Ethereum is disappointing, partly as a reflection of like this shift towards risk off assets and sort of broader like macro crypto narratives because we're still stuck in the crypto world. But it's partly also just because we've been so incredibly successful scaling the network that the market clearing price has gone down. Long run, I think there's pretty much infinite demand for network transaction capacity. So over time, Ethereum will become the place to do it. And I think any slight mismatches in how we're pricing blob capacity and network capacity get resolved in a reasonable way over time. I think one of the great things, we're the Fusaka upgrade, the watch party is tomorrow night. One of the amazing things about Ethereum, which is really sort of differentiates it from Bitcoin, is its capacity to adapt and tweak itself over time. Expectations that it's going to happen overnight are unrealistic because we shouldn't be moving fast and breaking things in $1 trillion infrastructure. But expectation that we can and should improve things over time and that it will continuously get better is perfectly reasonable. And that's exactly what keeps happening with Ethereum.
I mean, I love hearing that. And with this, we're sadly already at the end of the podcast. Paul, thanks again for being on the podcast, taking the time. It was very interesting to learn. I mean, I knew it, but maybe more for our audience, like to learn more about your journey, like your insights when it comes to privacy. We talked about stable coins, enterprise adoption of Ethereum. And there's actually a lot more I could talk with you. Like we haven't touched upon DeFi, and there's so much other cool stuff. So maybe we're going to have you again on the podcast, maybe for another season in a year, hopefully. But with this, I want to wrap it up. I wanted, as I said, thank you for being here. For our audience, if you liked our podcast today, please feel free to like, subscribe, and share our podcast. And also dial into our next episode, which will come the week after this one is aired. And with this, I want to say thank you and peace out.
Thanks for having me.